What's up, Truth Basketball? Listen, I got a fun one for the end of the summer for you. I heard somebody say that Patrick Ewing was one of the should be recognized as one of the 5 greatest players of all time. Absolutely ludicrous. And the response that somebody gave was, this guy isn't one of the 5 greatest centers of all time. And I thought to myself, they're right. I give him top 10, but not top 5. Here's my top 10 NBA centers of all time. Let me know what you think. Okay, so Jeff Van Gundy says that Patrick Ewing should be in the top 5 players of all time. It was bizarre. I mean, God bless him, you know. I'm all about loyalty and all that good jazz, but I mean, we got to be realistic here. Patrick Ewing isn't in the top 5 centers of all time. Maybe top 10. And with that being said, let's give my little 2 cents. Here's Coach's top centers of all time. So first you have to, I mean, if we want to just go with the safe number 1 greatest center of all time, you got to go with Kareem. He's got the numbers, he's got the longevity, he's got the championships. He's got the championships before he went to LA. Wilt Chamberlain himself said, hey, there was one person that I really actually needed some help to guard, and that was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Whether it's the Lou Alcindor days at the Bucks, whether it's the Showtime Lakers days, he's just one of the greats. The skyhook, the calm composure at all times, almost stoic at all times. This guy was one of the greats. Then it brings us to Wilt and Russ. We got to talk about them together. They're each other's rivals. They're synonymous. Wilt didn't have the championships, but Russ did. Russ was an all-around player, defensive-minded, had the championships, was the leader of a team. He was like the leader in front of his time. He was an era changer. Spent time as a player coach. Was a leader in the black community. Did a lot of things for the less fortunate. I mean, he's a great dude on and off the court, and commanded respect and got the respect of his teammates in an era where it was kind of weird racially. Then you have Wilt. Wilt was physically dominant. The 100-point game, the consistency, the sheer presence of this Goliath. This guy was and then he was athletic as well. Athletic, you know, when you get those guys who are physically imposing, they're built for it, but then they're also athletic, that's a problem. I mean, they say this guy could have been a professional in a variety of sports. He was a good high jumper, etc. But that brings us to number 4. We can't talk about physically dominant players without talking about Shaq. In an era of the center, all right, no disrespect to Wilt, but most of his competition was 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". Shaq came into a league full of great centers that we'll probably talk about before we get out of the top 10, and some of them will probably be 11 through 20. But this guy, as a young man, came into a league that had Patrick Ewing, that had Olajuwon, that had David Robinson, that had all of these great 7+ players, and dominated, just absolutely physically imposed his will. When he was young, he was too strong and too fast. When his speed deteriorated, he just became even bigger and heavier and more strong. You know, developing the baby hook, developing a little up and under. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, like in his early years, when he was able to run the floor hard, he was an absolute monster to guard. The players that did the best with him was able to score back at him to make him work hard on the other end. But Shaquille O'Neal. Now to round out our top 5, to finish that top 5 piece, unfortunately, the great Patrick Ewing is not part of it. I got to go with Hakeem Olajuwon. I didn't mean for the top 5 to segue the way they do, but they actually do. If we want to talk about Shaq's dominance, we also have to talk about the one guy that he hated playing, and the guy that I think did the best. Never backed down, never was intimidated, even though he didn't have the physical prowess that Shaquille O'Neal did. But what he had was speed, athleticism, and a insane knowledge of the game, and an incredible set of post moves, footwork, and fakes that just drove people absolutely crazy. His highlights are as good as any fancy ball handling guards. In the post, Hakeem Olajuwon, he made me love watching post players. Just to see his career progress and then a team get built around him, and him have those 2 championship years was amazing. He was just so dominant. I mean, he came in as an absolute defensive nightmare, just sending people shots left and right. Athletic and aggressive, but his post moves just continued to develop, and to the point where he was, throwing, the dream shake is what they call it. He was throwing fakes and up and unders, and the only person that I think even had close to the elusive post moves that Hakeem Olajuwon had was Kevin McHale, the great power forward for the Celtics. But there's my top 5. Jabbar, Wilt and Russell, whether you put them at 2 or 3, it doesn't matter to me. Shaq and Olajuwon. And actually, I'm not going to lie, I probably would like to put Olajuwon at 4, but, just Shaq's longevity and dominance, the number of championships he has, awards or whatever, I'll accept him at 4 and Olajuwon at 5. From the top 5, number 6 has to be Moses, the great Moses Malone. This guy was an absolute workhorse. He was a game changer and a glue guy wherever he went. I mean, obviously, the Sixers had a star-studded cast when the ABA and NBA merged, but it wasn't until Moses showed up that they were championship material. Just the way he rebounded, the work ethic, the strength that he brought to the game, the team concept, and even later in his career when he was floating around to different teams, he was a valuable asset to a number of places. He was a valuable asset to Houston when he was there. He was a valuable asset a ton of places. Moses Malone. Next, this is where the list is going to probably get a little bit controversial, but I think I got some good choices. Let's go with number 7. My first 6 probably didn't have a lot of argument, but I think my number 7's got to be Wes Unseld. Wes Unseld. Think about Dennis Rodman. They were able to slide him down to power forward early in his career. When he was older and a little bit stronger, he was a power forward that they used to slide down to center sometimes. Wes Unseld started at center. Whenever you have a person that goes to a trash team and within a couple years are a championship type of team, championship caliber, you have to ask yourself, you have to recognize the impact that player had. So even though he was only really a scorer in the mid-teens, he was a 3 assists per game guy, and he was like a almost 20 rebound a game guy, like 18 to 20 rebounds a game. This guy was an animal and only really about 6'6". Only really about 6'6", playing some of the great centers that we talked about already. This guy led the Bullets to a championship. He was a MVP as a rookie. This guy was, a lot of times people look at rebounds as just will. This guy put will and skill, technique. Some of the great centers even talk about, hey, this guy was a master of not giving up certain position and positioning his body and fighting. So this guy brought a skill to rebounding that was shown in how he got a lot of those assists. A lot of the assists were directly off of rebounds and being able to outlet the ball, underhand, overhand, one hand, two hand, to either an outlet or all the way down the court to a breaking player. People had that much faith that he was going to get the rebound that they were able to take off. And he was able to find them. Pivot, one dribble, launch it. Wes Unseld was a very unique player at 6'6", being able to hang with some of the great centers at that time and of all time, like Jabbar, etc. So my 8 and 9, this is where David Robinson and Patrick Ewing come in. David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, almost interchangeable, played around the same era. Very great centers. Robinson has one of the biggest turnarounds in NBA history. His rookie year helped turn the Spurs around. And I think statistically it is one of, if not the biggest turnaround years ever. And he comes in averaging 24 points or something of that nature. His entire career was like a 20-10 guy. He was able to put the ball on the floor a little better than most centers at the time. Consistent shot blocker, and shot the mid-range better than a lot of centers at the time. I think, this guy may have been like the early beginnings of, the new stretch forwards and stretch centers. David Robinson did get a championship in his late career under Popovich when Tim Duncan shows up. Patrick Ewing, another consistent guy, averages a little bit less, but still a consistent 20-10 guy. A lot of times doesn't get the credit because he never won a championship, but unlike Van Gundy, I'm not going to give him top 5 or 10 players. We'll give him top 10 centers, and that's the meaning of this list. He is a 20-10 guy. His various Knick teams only get eliminated by the potential champion for the vast majority of his career. There's a stretch that it was the Pistons, the Bulls, the Rockets that eliminated him, the potential champion. So that's saying something when you go as far as you possibly can go before hitting the champ. Once again, not winning a championship, and sometimes the bad rap he gets for having trouble with players like Olajuwon and so forth. It was an error of the center. That's why I do believe you could put him easily on the top 10 list of centers, because there were so many good centers in the late 80s through mid to late 90s. Last but not least, George Mikan. We're going to go with George Mikan. The early dominance, the beginning of the league. George Mikan changed the game. Rules were added to deal with his dominance. I believe he's credited for, the shot clock, because people had a stall technique to try to deal with how unstoppable George Mikan was. I mean, what good coach hasn't helped train a big man by using the Mikan drill? The simple beginning post skills, baby hooks, etc. All come from this early stud, George Mikan. So that's my top 10 list. What do you think about my top 10 list? Let me know in comments. That was a little fun one. Keep training, keep working hard. Truth Basketball. If there's anything I could do, let me know. Be good to yourself.